All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today, which is how high school teachers can get back into the groove during a pandemic. We're so excited to be talking with you today and covering this really important topic and speaking with some really exciting, really engaged high school educators. In this session today, we're going to be covering just hearing about some experiences from the front lines over the past 5, 6, 7 months, especially during COVID-19 last spring and this fall in the classroom, especially the high school classroom, and some of the unique challenges there. So we'll hear some stories from some of our panelists, and then we'll hear some tips as well for what you all can do. What can we do as instructors, as teachers, as administrators, maybe even as parents in some cases, to help facilitate learning and navigate this transition in these crazy times right now. So some of the topics we'll be covering are teaching methods and methodologies that are in use right now, whether you're teaching hybrid, you're teaching fully online, or perhaps you are teaching in person right now. We'll talk about some tools and technologies that teachers and educators can use and are using right now to help facilitate learning. And then we'll also talk about things like student engagement and classroom management in this current world, and perhaps even what school administrators can do. So my name is Mark Fuller. I'm a product manager or part of the product team in general here at Labster, based out of our Boston office. But we have a very global group here at Labster and here today as part of this exciting Science Online conference, the first one that we've done. So in this session, I'm so excited to be joined by 3 or actually 4 colleagues, 3 live. The first is Stacia Bowden, who is from the Tulsa Technology Center. Also Margaret Moore from Friendship Collegiate Academy, and Bernard Bujard from Uvalde High School in Texas. We'll also be joined by video from Sue White, who is also part of the Friendship Charter School Network that operates in a few different states. But really the session is about, it's about by and for you all, high school educators, K-12 educators, what's going on out there, what are people doing, and discussing some tips. So without further ado, I'd love to jump right in and kick things over to our panelists. So maybe, Margaret, I could even start with you. Can you tell me a little bit about, just introduce yourself, what are you teaching, what school do you represent, and are you teaching online or sort of in person right now?
Absolutely. So hi, everybody. My name is Margaret Moore. I teach for Friendship Collegiate Academy in Washington, D.C. I teach environmental science. I teach environmental sustainability, which is an engineering approach to environmental science. And then I also teach AP Environmental. We are currently all online right now. We have a go back to campus date of February 1st. So we are gearing up because we actually don't know what that looks like. We don't know if it's a hybrid situation. We don't know if it's 100% in person yet. So we are preparing for all possibilities right now.
Great, thank you so much. And Mr. Bernard Bujard, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yes, sir. Hello, everyone. My name is Bernard Bujard. I teach at Uvalde High School in Uvalde, Texas. Right now, we're hybrid right now. It's a combination of online learning and in-person learning. And we've been like that since probably the middle of the summer. Well, towards the end of last semester.
Great, and can I ask what courses you're teaching?
AP Chemistry and dual credit chemistry as an adjunct professor for a Southwest Texas junior college. So we stack the kids in the same class. We have a combination of AP Chem and dual credit in the same class, and I've got 3 block schedules of those students.
Okay, great. And Stacia?
Hi, my name is Stacia Bowden. I work in Tulsa, Oklahoma for Tulsa Technology Center. I teach, this year I only have juniors and seniors, but in the past I've had sophomores through seniors. And I teach human body systems, medical interventions, and biomedical innovations. They're all essentially biomedical science classes taught through Project Lead the Way curriculum. I'm also a HOSA advisor, which is our student career tech organization for healthcare professionals. And we teach Well, last March they closed schools in Oklahoma pretty much, but we came back face-to-face in August, and I teach some face-to-face, I teach some hybrid, I teach some that are completely virtual, and then in and out, students bounce back and forth between being quarantined for COVID infections and those that were around them. So it's a mixture for sure.
I think it's simple these days. Okay, that's really, really helpful. So I'd love to turn it over to whoever wants to jump in. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you all are teaching right now. So for instance, asynchronous versus synchronous activities, how you structuring your classes, what teaching methods are you using? Are you lecturing and only lecturing? Are there interactive activities? And we can go into tools a bit more specifically later, but I'd love to learn at a high level what folks are doing.
Sure, I can jump in. Mark, I teach through project-based learning. So almost every lesson that I teach is part of a larger project, right? And so there's almost no lecture. Lots of, when we're in the classroom, lots of hands-on, lots of group work, lots of just independent learning and team-based learning. Of course, that looks a little bit different now, but I have been really fully supported by my admin to keep up with project-based learning and provided with a lot of resources to do that. The Labster has become an integral part of that, replacing some of that hands-on experience. But that's really been the goal. Of course, we're using, like a lot of people, Google Classroom as our LMS and, lots of tools that interface with Google Classroom. We have 4 days of synchronous virtual instruction a week. And then Wednesdays, students have self-paced lessons. So Wednesday is our asynchronous day. And, that's pretty much how it's set up. It's intense, but
that's throughout the entire school, that structure?
That is. So there's a little bit of variation with lower school students. So 9th and 10th graders have some A-Day, B-Day classes that they have year-long versus we're on the semester, upper schools on semester-based block system. So there's a little bit of variation within the school, but that's pretty much, upper school is pretty much all semester-based block system, 4 days of synchronous, virtual, and then 1 day of asynchronous.
Great, okay. And Mr. Bujard, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Yes, sir. Before we were doing all hands-on laboratories. Now we're still doing some hands-on laboratories in the AP chemistry. And the way we have to do that is students in the class will have to take pictures of their lab, like they're weighing something on the balance or they're mixing chemicals or doing a titration, for example. They have to take pictures of that and they upload those pictures onto Google Classroom. And the virtual students can access those pictures and put it into their digital lab journal. So the ones online virtually are still participating in hands-on labs by uploading the images and keeping track of the data in their digital journals. Now, recently we've been switching to a lot of virtual labs like the Labster. And after a while, I can show you some of the tools that I use when I share my screen, but we have Labster and Schoology, and we also have Labster Direct, and it's working really good for both, and the kids love it. So they're getting a lot of lab experience, and I've talked to AP College Board, and they said they do accept virtual labs, for example, Labster, and that could be included in the curriculum. And then the junior college is really convinced that the Labster is the right thing to do right now, at least for the next several months until conditions change.
Great, okay. And Stacia?
Yeah, mine's kind of a mix of both of theirs, funny enough. So for my seniors, it's definitely almost completely project-based. They're working on an ER design right now where they're going to compete against each other to create an ER that can move faster, less mistakes, get people in and out, because we start with a scenario, a case study about people who go into the ERs and end up passing away. They die because they can't get service fast enough. And of course, now with the pandemic, we're seeing that more and more. There's just not enough staff to go around. Maybe they can't get to the technology quick enough. And so with my seniors, we have a lot of discussions or Socratic seminars, but they are working in their groups because they've spent the last 3 years learning all the curriculum, and now they're definitely putting it into play. My juniors do a lot of labs. They're working on a bacterial conjugation lab right now, and it's similar to what Mr. Bujard was saying as far as my virtual students are looking at pictures of what's going on. They still have all the same lab discussions. They still write the full lab reports. They still learn APA citations, but they're having to use the pictures that their colleagues or cohorts are using inside the lab. And then I use Labster to introduce new topics. And I find that even if we haven't studied it, it allows them, Labster can lead them through and gives them enough information that they can really question it. And the one thing I love about it, because I'm doing the labs with them, is my 8-year-old son will sit next to me and he gets stuff out of it just like my seniors do. And my students did tell me this year, they said, well, we can't cheat on the Labster, and some of the other virtual labs, we could just, ABC it. They're like, these labs actually make you think. I had to stop and think and actually learn something. So that's been so great. So mine's a kind of a combination of both of theirs.
It's always nice to hear when your 8-year-old can join in a little bit. So yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about some of the different actual technologies you're using, the tools you're using, what has worked well, maybe what has not worked quite as well, but yeah, just I'll open the floor up, but not just Labster. Certainly we'd love to hear how you're using virtual labs and whether they're from Labster or other places, but yeah, just what tools, what technologies, what vendors are you all using?
I'll go ahead and just stay with mine. I have a sheet that I kind of created as I went through different technologies and had to basically get a master's in technology this summer, like I'm sure everyone else did. Our school uses Microsoft Teams, and I had always learned how to do things on Google, so that was a definite transition. And Teams was definitely not up to Zoom standards or Google Classroom standards at the time. Teams has done a ton of work and has really upped their products, and they've listened to teachers, which I really appreciate. So we use Teams. We have Blackboard for the grading system, but honestly, using Teams to video chat, we use that a lot. The students will work on projects together because they can work on those, whether it's an Excel or a Word document, they can work on that together. I also use Loom if I need to make certain video lessons for myself because it was free and I'm a teacher. So that was nice. But also just any of the whiteboard softwares that are through Google, to be quite honest with you, that allow my students that are virtual to participate at the same time, especially when we're trying to figure out calculations like serial deletions. That's really hard to do if you don't have some interaction. So we use that a lot, and we use games. So we use Kahoot quite a bit, but we also use GimKit, which is relatively new in the last couple of years. And I would encourage people to really check that out, because with Kahoot, they have to go the pace of the class. With GimKit, they can go as fast or as slow as they want. They can buy power-ups. I mean, it really is more like a game. And they have special modes like humans versus zombies this month, or, the floor is lava. So they have all these team things that they can do as well. So anything we can do to make it fun for the students and make them want to come in and get out of their kind of isolation that they're in, because we've been struggling with that, is I'll try it. I'm like, bring it on. Any ideas? Let's do this.
I love that. And just a quick point, I saw a question come through. We're actually going to post a link in the chat to some of the resources that Stacia is talking about that she's used, and just it should be a Google document that anyone can access. Certainly we can also follow up after this presentation with some specifics and type things up. But if we can go ahead and post that link in the chat at some point in the next couple of minutes, we think that would be great. And what about others? Are some of these tools familiar? Do you use other ones? Just curious what else we're working on. Margaret or
yeah, I can jump in. We use, I mentioned earlier, we're using Google Classroom as our LMS. We have PowerSchool for grading, which also has sort of a Google Classroom feature, or a feature that works like Google Classroom. We're using Nearpod a lot. Like I think a lot of people are. We're using Zoom for our face-to-face. Most teachers, we do have the option to use other video platforms. When I am making videos, I use a combination of OBS Studio, which is free to download, and then iMovie just on my phone, and YouTube. We're using another virtual lab system called Explore Learning that is good in its own way, but I will tell you that my students don't like it nearly as much as they like Labster. Like, I've had a lot of pushback because they've our students have just they're kind of overwhelmed with all the new platforms that they're getting, and so I get pushback. Well, once they tried Labster, there was no more pushback, and so that's always great. But we are using Explore Learning, which is good in a completely different way. Using a lot of Edpuzzle. I don't particularly like Kahoot because of I have a large population, a large SPED population, and so I don't think it's quite fair for a lot of our kids, and they get frustrated and disengaged, and I hate to see that. And Nearpod has a feature kind of like that I don't use for the same reason. But Nearpod does have a ton of interactives and games built in to play, just, lots of matching activities and things like that are great. But I'm definitely interested in checking out your document that we've linked, I see, and just hearing what everybody else is using.
Margaret, I would second the Kahoot, which is why I started looking into GimKit, because for my students that just process slower. Myself, I understand a lot of content, but I read very slowly because in my mind, I read like a narrator's reading to me. So to be able to go super, super fast, that doesn't work for me. And GimKit, they can really kind of go at their own pace. It'll go through the questions over and over again. And so they're not having to wait on someone. And then the faster students can go faster and the slower students can really take their time. And so I think they all have their kind of their place, which is why I love getting to interact with you guys and hear different ideas, because that's exactly right. There's not one platform that works for all of these students.
Yeah, I'm super excited to check out GimKit for sure.
And down in Uvalde, Mr. Bujard,
Yes.
what kind of tools?
Right now, we're using the Skyward LMS Learning Management System. We're in the process of gradually switching over to Schoology, and I've been integrating the Labster labs into Schoology. Using Labster Direct to do that, including the links. So at the junior college, though, they're using a different LMS. They're using Canvas. So Canvas, we had to use a zip file to import the Labster. So it's a slightly different method for them to access the Labster. So it's two different LMS, three counting Skyward. Of course, Skyward is not integrated with the labs or Labster. Some of the other softwares we use Jamboards a lot for note-taking. So, and some of the students will submit their work using Jamboards as well, which is a really good software tool. And they can take the entire Jamboard and send it to me in an email. So we're using Google Classroom, of course, that I mentioned. We're using the Google Suite, which is the forms. I take attendance on Google Forms. So it's not enough for them to just log into Google Meets. They have to fill out an attendance form, and that's submitted into a spreadsheet, and I have a record of that. Then we use Docs, Google Docs, and Google Slides. Google Slides is really good. Besides that, we have, well, those are the main softwares that we use right now, okay?
That's great. Excellent. Yeah, these are great lists. And I'll just, again, encourage everyone, if you go to the conference website later on and you log in, you can go to the high school section and we can all swap some of these names, like the larger group in general.
There's one more, excuse me, there's one more that I had on my list here. Our old textbook before we switched to AP Chem was from Pearson Scientific, which is now Savvas, Savvas. They have really good interactive software for virtual learning. And they do have some virtual labs, but it's very limited. It's mostly interactive software. So we use a lot of that too.
Excellent. Great. Well, a few points that were brought up here made me think of the question of students and of student engagement and how they're handling this, first of all, second of all, how you all are helping to motivate students and helping drive student engagement and make sure, if a certain portion of your class is falling behind, how remotely or in a sort of weird hybrid environment, how are you encouraging them to stay on board? Let's stick with you, Bernard.
Well, of course, they have to log in on Google Meets using forms. So I've got their attendance there. And then once I have their list of students there, I will ask them to mute their microphones. They don't have to keep their microphones on because it gets too noisy in the background. And they can keep their video off. I don't want to invade their privacy. For students, I ask them to turn the video off. When I ask them to answer a question, I'll call them randomly and ask them to answer a question. And they have to give me an answer. They can't just give me an, I don't know, or they have to give me some sort of answer. And a lot of times I'll guide them so they give me some sort of correct answer or give them clues, okay, so that they don't look foolish and they're answering something, okay? And so they get a participation for answering questions. And I do the same for everybody in the class.
Excellent. And Stacia, do you want to jump in?
With my students, I started off the year with what I thought was going to be my virtual expectations, with like saying their name, because if you have 10 students who are talking to you and you're not sure who's saying something, and yeah, you may know them, but not enough. I'm like, please say, this is so-and-so. I mean, stuff like that. As far as the cameras, for us, when we are doing assessments, we're required for the students to have their cameras on. They can change their background just like I did on mine, whether we're in Zoom or in Teams. So that's not ever a problem. When I was at home, I know my bedroom would be messy and I would put up a different background. I'm like, look, it's all clean, yay. But one of the items that we've really struggled with is obviously engagement and depression. And so when we've gotten together as teachers, we've told these students that if they can remember a few things. One is to have grace for themselves, grace for each other, and grace for their parents, their family, kind of everyone in this craziness. It's all new. Flexibility. Sometimes things are not going to work, and it is what it is, and we're gonna push through it, which kind of leads to the communication, which is the biggest issue when students are not able to understand something. Or maybe I had my mic muted one day. I had no idea that my mic was muted for 15 minutes, and the virtual students didn't know I was muted because we have to teach like this, so you can't see my mouth moving, you can just see my head moving. So communication is key. And last, we tell the students it's okay to fail. Science is about failing and seeing, wow, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? It's okay to see that. And lastly, I would tell teachers, all that advice we give those students, throw it back to yourself, because we're not going to be perfect. There are not enough hours in the day to make everything the way we want. And I think if your students know that you care about them and you love them and you want them to succeed, then they know that you're invested and they'll invest more. I still have kids that struggle with the apathy, the ones especially that are home. And we work on that. We try and get them, make sure that they're coming in, make sure that they're talking. And there are days that they can come into the classroom and they feel so much better just being around people. We're human beings, and we're doing this for safety, which is the way it should be as far as distancing. But they have to know that they have somebody there. I call it their tribe. Find your tribe, find your people that are there to support you and hang on to them.
I love that idea of having a little grace and flexibility in the midst of all of this. Margaret, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so, just from an engagement standpoint, just tracking engagement, Nearpod is a tool that I use because you can put those little checks for understanding in, and it actually spits out a report at the end that tells you like which students were engaged when. And so to Stacia's point, it's not necessarily about like hammering in, you have to be logged on every single minute. They do have to have their cameras on. We have district wide, but it's, if a student's checked out, and I taught the kids that I'm teaching this year, I taught a lot of them also their 10th grade years, so I know them. So if a kid's checked out that's not normally checked out, like there's something wrong. And so, tracking engagement is not only great, educational practice strictly, but it's also a really great social practice because, we kind of can know where our kids are. And I know I had something else that I wanted to say about engagement, but Stacia's absolutely right. Just checking in, a lot of our kids, I know what I was going to say. A lot of our students are transient right now. They're moving in with different relatives. They're not in one home setting. And so, depending on kind of who's sick and who can afford to house them this moment. I mean, that's just the reality of where a lot of our high school students are, especially our urban high school students. And so, just understanding that and being, I have never been in that situation, fortunately, but just being as flexible as possible in all of this. And you know what? I've got a 3-year-old at home. I've got a husband and I share an office with. I need that grace too, like we all do. And so, if I extend that grace, I'll get it back. And so, that's just where we are right now. Absolutely.
Yeah, that idea of having some kindness for yourself, I think, is really important. And I know a lot of teachers, and I know people are very driven and don't always take that moment or frame things in that way. And I think that's a really, really important point. Well, maybe now is a great time actually to hear a little bit from Sue White, our other colleague, and I'll do a quick introduction. Maybe that we could fire up the video once I do that. I know she's listening in, so hi there, Sue. Sue White works with Margaret. It's part of the Friendship Charter School network, which I believe there's a couple in Arkansas, a couple in Louisiana, and then several in Washington, D.C. And she's the director of STEM at Friendship Charter School Network. And previous to that, I believe she was a principal at Howard University Middle School of Math and Science, and then director of mathematics for DC Public Schools previous to that. And just had a few words to say about how school leaders and administrators can help out and tell the story a little bit of their school. So yeah, if we could possibly open up that video now. Could you just maybe tell us a little bit about, from that leadership perspective, from the administrator perspective, what your experience has been over the past 6 months or so since COVID-19 hit, what has been happening at your schools, and I guess what tips do you have for others?
Okay, I think the tips will come from what we did. We're quite proud of where we are at this point. When the school shut down around the middle of March, we went right into action mode and immediately put teachers on vacation. And we began to plan. We used that week to plan. When they came back, we were ready to go. I think one of the key areas that we've been good about is that representation of all stakeholders in the decision-making. And that is to include students, parents, friends in the community, teachers, principals, etc. I think that is huge. We must remember that as we're planning. I think that's a part of our success. I think we've got to think about clarity and communications. And what I mean is being sure that we're communicating at every level. I think sometimes we assume that we are. So we're really careful about that. And we match that with visual and print media. We have, and I think by design, formed a partnership with teachers to ensure that they received all that they needed to successfully implement the virtual learning. And here are some areas where we felt really strongly about. We provided hotspots for teachers who lived in areas where there was a weakness in reception, and we did the same thing with students and parents. We are making sure every day that their technology is working and that there is a plan for maintenance of that technology. All of that is just so very important. We have to remember that our teachers are parents as well. And they wake up and they put their children online and then they begin to teach. And we must always be mindful of that. So we've tried to really take care of them in every way possible. We've provided classroom materials. Anything that they need, they get right away. We deliver it. We do reimbursements we're cognizant that they're using their own internet at home, so we provide reimbursements for internet use. We have created regular surveys to distribute so that we can stay on point. We are sincerely serious about taking feedback from everyone. We listen, we bring people together, and then we say, what are we doing? What can we do better? And what are we doing well? So I think that's been a key to our success. An open and transparent atmosphere, so that when we have these Zoom meetings, we say to the constituents, tell us what we can do better. And it's working. And they began to believe that we were serious because they saw evidence of their suggestions as time went on. We do have frequent town halls, Zoom meetings to fine-tune the protocols. We have immediate and frequent teacher and parent training relative to the effective organization of virtual platforms, which would be, just to name a few, Zoom particularly, Google Classroom, Google Meet, Nearpod, those organizational pieces that keep the classroom going. We are partnering with teachers such that our virtual visits don't seem intimidating, but rather a partnership, because we're really visiting their classes to learn. And they now accept that and understand that, and they look forward to our teacher check-ins. We think we have an atmosphere where teachers are free to discover and use creative and innovative virtual programs, which is how we discovered Labster. And to explain further, as a STEM team, we had reviewed countless virtual programs, searching for a real laboratory experience for high school students, or a reasonable proximity of the same. In the quest for such a platform, one of our unusually resourceful teachers had discovered Labster, was using it, and had shared it with other teachers. That's how we came upon Labster. We didn't find it, our teachers find it. So my suggestion to leaders, listen and watch, observe, pay attention, and free your teachers up to be innovative and creative. We do follow that up with weekly professional developments so that teachers can stay on top of the new platforms. I think that's key. And we also, I don't know what districts other people are in, but we're in Washington, so we're in a smaller district. And so we do work with the mayor's office and try to synchronize things that make sense for us. So we have people on the mayor's team as she works through the pandemic relative to the school situation. And then that has been very, very helpful. We take their ideas as they are appropriate.
Okay, that's great. And then, what about the future then too? I mean, do you see things, maybe no one knows exactly what's happening in a couple of months from now, but yeah, what do you see changing?
I don't think things will ever be the same again. I have observed an innovativeness and a creativeness in teachers that I never saw before. And I don't ever want that to change again, that they were free to go out and find resources that work. I love that part. We will probably never, ever, ever get rid of Zoom. I think we're going to use Zoom to our best. We don't always have to schlep across town to another school. We can have a meeting, and Zoom keeps us succinct. So I don't think we'll ever give up the best of Zoom. I know that we will never give up our virtual partnerships. And I must say that Labster is an exceptional partner. And we hope that we can continue to design and develop with you to bring, because as I understand it, you didn't intend, the program wasn't intended for high schools. And in some cases, we're using, 3 of our middle schools are using Labster. So I don't think things will be the same anymore. We're going to rethink efficiency.
Yeah, good. Well, that's it seems like that's what everyone is saying these days.
Yeah.
That, you know, but maybe things will go back to normal in most other areas, but we'll continue evolving, and that's good to hear that that's how you're thinking.
We definitely plan to continue. Yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sue. This has been really helpful. All right. Nothing quite so odd as watching a video of yourself when your head is floating above it in the corner of the screen. Well, that's that super helpful, I think, to get a sense of just an administration perspective a little bit, and a story of how one school network handled some of these things. But yeah, let's jump right into questions. We only have a little over 10 minutes left, maybe 10 or 15 minutes left. So I would love to ask the panel and ask the group. Let's just start down from the top here with the first question we've received. What sorts of methods do you employ to differentiate your instruction from in the virtual lab and remote learning environment from, I suppose, the in-person? Anyone want to jump in?
Well, I think we've kind of discussed some of these already. And Jamboard, I'm glad that he brought up Jamboard because that was another one. That's what I use for my my math when we're working on things because it's free, it's easy for the kids to use, it's not too complicated. But the virtual labs versus the Zoom or the Teams meetings, the different types of games or different styles, finding out what works best for your students, knowing who your students are, and my students really enjoy, and I have some sitting in here. I don't know if they would agree. Did you guys like making those memes?
I did.
If you can laugh at yourself and your kids can laugh at you at the end of each year, I let them make memes about me or the class or whatever. We vote on what's the funniest. And I think the kids respect that. They like if you can laugh at yourself and they know that you're there for them. So talk to your students and ask them what works best for them, because a lot of times we think as teachers it's working great, and on their end at home it's not the same experience.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Know your students. Absolutely know your students. And then, also I'll say it one more time, project-based learning is the easiest thing to differentiate. It just, and we are fortunate. If you didn't already know before that video with Sue White, now you know Friendship public charter schools is one of the best places to work in the world. I'm not biased or anything, but we still have, and where a lot of school districts are scaling down and spreading out, we actually bought in and hired more special educators for this time period. And so, those co-taught classes, those small groups, the attention to detail that only highly skilled special educators can offer, they are amazing people, dig into that, embrace that, and just, relying on the expertise of your colleagues. Absolutely.
Meg, I think you need to have Sue teach some administrator classes. I've got wonderful administrators. I'm very lucky where I'm at, but it's not that way everywhere. And, administrators really can make or break a teacher and their spirit completely if they don't feel supported. Just like, your secretaries can make or break a school. Same thing. It's all a team effort. So hearing what she does and how she works with you is amazing. And I would hope any administrator that's on takes that, because we all can find ways we can improve. And it's great to hear that there's administrators out there working for you and for the students, putting them first.
Absolutely. I've been with Friendship for 6 years, and they have never said no to anything that I've asked for that made sense for the kids. And especially in this time, everything that we have asked for, we wanted. My kids are getting individual fish tanks to take home for second quarter to do project-based learning.
They're so jealous. They're like, that's not fair.
Everybody's getting a fish tank. You get a fish tank and you get a fish tank. But no, it's, exactly. So, they have not said no. And so, support your teachers even when what your teachers are asking are crazy, because they know your students, and they know, they know what's best for your students. So, I mean, that's really, those are my methods is, listen to people who know better than me, and also just know your students and what they need.
And if you set those expectations high for your students, I gave my students the Labster when we were trying it out in March. They didn't know those were college labs. I specifically picked labs that I thought, okay, yes, this is about what we're talking about, but let's see what they can do. My students were able to do it because they didn't know they couldn't do it. They thought that was the expectation. They're kind of laughing now, like, what? Those were college labs or high school? They're looking at me now because I've got someone here working on a project-based stuff. But when they find out later, oh my gosh, that was the level I was doing it at. Just like with my 8-year-old son, he goes back and talks about stuff at school, and his teacher's like, I don't know what he's saying about that. I don't understand. I'm like, just let him talk, let him do his thing. He doesn't know that that's not what an 8-year-old should learn. So if you set those expectations high, and you can do that really easy in project-based learning, because you have your own expectations, and most of the time the students will surpass even what I think they're there to do.
Absolutely. Just like administrators support your teachers in dreaming big, teachers, that's what we do. We support our students in dreaming big and going beyond. Absolutely.
a really good point. And I think, and just as a side note on what Sue said before, labs are definitely started more in the higher education space, and we're increasingly, and especially these days, we're trying to build more and more simulations that are really aimed at high school level. But I think you make a great point, Stacia, that it doesn't necessarily matter. Like, look at the simulations or whatever content it is, it doesn't have to be Labster. And if you think your students can do it, or it's a little bit of a stretch, it may work, right? Depending on what you're teaching and who you're teaching. I'd love to jump to the question about how to maximize your time. You know, the one question here is, how are you able to maximize your time? Our hybrid schedule causes us to meet 6 times a month for some of our courses. So I don't know if Mr. Bujard, you want to jump in and take that one? Do you have any particular tips, strategies, or how do you do this?
Yes, I've got some strategies and tips that I'd like to add. Something Margaret and Stacia were also saying. First of all, you have to know your students, okay? And in Labster, you have 2 settings. And it's a way of differentiating also. You have a setting where it's a one-time test, for example, doing Labster, or you can take the best result. And I have the setting on take the best result. And it's also the way the junior college recommended I do it. Also do it with AP students. It works out great because if they mess up the first time, let's say they had a technology issue, which happens sometimes, they get booted out of the system, they can go back in and redo their score and improve it. So it works great for differentiation also. So now it helps me maximize my time because this is automatically reported to Canvas. So we have a gradebook in Canvas also. The grades go directly to the gradebook in Canvas. Now in Schoology, we're still integrating that. Right now I have to manually transfer grades from the Labster to Direct, which is Schoology right now, into our Skyward system because we're not linked with Skyward yet. So I'll be able to save a lot of time later once we integrated. So yeah, the Labster actually saves a lot of time. And you got to know your students well, and you've got to really be flexible because I run into problems sometimes and the kids run into problems with technology. So I have to extend deadlines. I have a deadline set for this date, say a couple of weeks, and I'll find it, well, they had technology issue. Well, I'm not going to penalize them for turning an assignment late because they had a technology issue, because I have them too. A lot of times when I'm conducting a meeting, I save a lot of time by having a mediator. I choose a mediator from each class, and that mediator will tell me if I have the microphone off, if I have my video off, and I can't always see the chat section, so the mediator will save me time from going back and forth in and out of the chat section to read questions. She'll let me know there's a question in chat, and she'll read the question to me. So the mediator will help a lot. Saves me a lot of time.
That's great. I love that idea. I think that makes a lot of, we all need production support the way that we have it here today as we're speaking in this session a little bit. That's excellent. Anyone else on time saving or maximizing your time, that limited amount of time you do have with students?
I would say one of the best pieces of advice I got was students were able to reach me through Remind. They were able to reach me through my email. They were able to reach me through Blackboard, through Teams. And I was staying up all hours of the night because, of course, my students needed me, and I had to respond to them. My husband was like, this is enough. I wasn't having enough time for my kids, for myself, for him. It was exhausting. And I had an administrator say, what can you take off your plate? And I was like, there's nothing I can take off my plate. Oh, are you kidding? There's nothing. And he said, why do you respond to every single one of them? I was like, if they're going to reach out, I want that. He said, have them ask each other first. Use their discussion boards and post those questions to each other first. They're going to help each other out. And then when you're back at school, then you respond to them. It was hard this year, but I told my students, if you send me a remind message at 1 o'clock in the morning, that's fine if you're up then. But even if I'm up, I'm not going to respond to it because I'm putting my phone down and I'm making time for me and my family. I still love you guys. I'm giving you guys 100%. But having that extra just questioning taken off when it could be something really simple, like maybe they just didn't hear it in the instructions, they can post it on Teams into the general discussion and another student can answer it and it's taken care of. And that was really a huge help. And I love that mediator advice that he gave. That's something that I should definitely initiate in my classes.
Also, things that grade themselves. I mean, that kind of goes without saying, but things that grade themselves, things like Labster, just things that grade themselves. I don't, while I would love to, individually read every single response and be able to, visualize student thinking, it's just not realistic right now. It's just not. And so things that grade themselves that's my biggest piece of advice. And that's why I'm always the try it first girl. Like any kind of new tech thing at school, like I'm the try it first person. And then I tell other teachers at my school whether they really want to dive into it or not. And they're like, when we got Labster, because we got access to Labster after the start of the school year and everybody's kind of set in what they were going to do. And I was like, no, you're going to like this. It integrates with Google Classroom and it grades itself. Like you're going to like it. You're going to like it. So yeah. Emphasis on things that grade themselves.
Yeah, we fought for Labster because when I saw how engaged my students were and that it did grade itself and that they could make mistakes and go back and do it again, I was like, we need this. And it was at such a high level. Some of the other virtual labs I was finding, they just weren't up to the level that they needed to be. I love how much detail that Labster puts into it, and it makes it a case scenario. So it's not just a basic, okay, here's how you pipette, here's how you do that. It's got real world technology to it, so the students can see where that fits in. Why would they PCR? Why would they do these different things?
All right, well, thank you so much. I think maybe we can do one final, almost a lightning round of any final thoughts, any tips you have for all of the other teachers out there, maybe administrators on this session, or that may watch it afterwards. If you have 30 seconds just to distill any other tips you give, what would you say? And Stacia, do you want to start?
Have fun. My kids I love purple. I did purple hair to have fun with them, and it's kind of become a joke. I'm the purple ninja. Take time for yourself. Love on your students. We do mental health days every couple of weeks where sometimes they can just lay their head down. Sometimes we played games the other day. Take time to be human and reconnect with each other, and take time for yourself.
And Bernard?
Yes, I'd like to add that what I recommend is that with the Labster, the setting would be they can take their best result. And this is one of the first times I've actually seen 100% participation with labs. And we've got 100% participation with labs, whereas you're doing a hands-on lab, some people kind of sit in the background and they're in a group and they don't want to participate. They're scared of making a mistake or whatever reason. So we have 100% participation, and out of 5 Labster assignments, which I gave them for the quarter, minimum of 5, we had 98% completion on those 5 Labster assignments for the quarter, which is really good. Some of them had a couple of tech issues the first 2 weeks of school, so we had to work through tech issues, and so did they. So that was an issue. And then once we got started, the participation has been really, really good.
That's great. Okay. And Margaret, any final thoughts?
Sure. Just don't forget that what we're being asked to do right now is impossible. It just is. We are not designed to juggle all of these balls at one time. And so, back to Stacia's point from earlier, have grace with yourself, reach for things that make your life a little bit easier in the moment, especially if the rigor is there. But just be kind. This is not an easy task for anyone. So just be kind, take a deep breath, stop when you need to.
I like that. So I think that's a really good point, and it's a good segue into, I don't know if anyone on in this session saw Sal Khan earlier in our keynote, but he mentioned, he used the example of a piece of chalk is technology, right? That is education technology. But when we think about that, the chalk itself is a tool. It does not itself enrich your students' lives. It doesn't necessarily teach them by itself. It doesn't motivate them. It doesn't check in on them, all of these things. So I wanted to end here by saying thank you. Not just thank you to all of you who have helped that are in this call right now, and but to everyone else participating, all the teachers out there that are moving mountains, as you say, Margaret. It's incredible to watch, and it shouldn't have to be this hard sometimes. And then there are crazy world events that we're all dealing with also. But I think it's really important to pause here and recognize the role of teachers and educators and everything that you all are doing. So from us at Labster, from everyone, I think, I just wanted to say thank you very much. So thanks so much to the panelists today. I wanted to encourage you all to go to the conferences.labster.com website, log in, and then you can use those community chat rooms to speak with each other and connect and swap resource ideas and things like that. We have a few more sessions coming up later today at 2:45 p.m. Eastern time here in the US. We have a kind of a closing panel discussion about the future of education beyond COVID. And then I believe an hour after that at 3:45 Eastern time, we have our Labster CEO giving a little bit of his take on the future of learning as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Best of luck, and I hope you have a great rest of your semester, whether it's fall or spring or wherever you are in the world. So thank you. Bye-bye.